Hello, and welcome to Freya's Tropical Garden.
It's been 11 days since my last garden update, so I wanted to give you a look at how things are going now. There have been some big changes that have taken place in my garden, including the loss of the big ensete which I showed you in a previous video. And I've tentatively planted a few more things out into the garden.
Now, unfortunately this week it hasn't been the best week for my bananas.
My husband, who loves his photography, had the wonderful idea of stripping back the Musa bananas to expose a bit more of their stem so they would really show up in his night photography. Unfortunately, this has really weakened the plants that rely on this thickness to support the weight of the leaves. And as you can see here, this leaf has just collapsed, despite the attempts to add some support. And earlier in the week, one of my bananas completely collapsed so that we've had to cut the top off, although you can see it has been regrowing very quickly since then. So if you're thinking of doing this at home, I do not recommend it. I have, however, got a new ensete banana which I have now planted into the garden. These are relatively quick growing plants, so hopefully it won't be too long before it starts to reach the size of my old banana. And in place of my larger ensete, I have put my Strelitzia nicolai. This is a larger variety of the bird of paradise plant, and so hopefully we'll fill that spot quite nicely this summer. I have also planted out my smaller Strelitzia plant, and this is the spot that I've normally put it in. Both of these have been slowly acclimatising to being outdoors over the last couple of weeks. My Musa sycamensis, which collapsed over this winter, has now got a second leaf from the pup that's growing alongside it. And I've also noticed a second pup starting to grow alongside the stump. And I actually think the stump itself might still be alive, so may grow back again as well. The nearby Musella banana is growing nicely. I've never had much luck overwintering these indoors, so it's quite a relief to find out that they're actually doing very well surviving outdoors throughout winter. Now, you may have heard that we're being asked to leave our lawns unmowed throughout May to help with bees. So at the moment I've got quite a few daisies and dandelions in my lawn. And I'm also going one step further and leaving a few flowering weeds in place, just for the now, while I haven't got anything else growing here.
So now the tulips are starting to fade, but there's still plenty more colour here in the garden.
I have quite a few arum lilies around the garden, which are all flowering nicely now. These are great at adding a splash of tropical colour around the garden. And the nice thing about this plant is it usually flowers throughout the summer, although it may take a break between flowering. And it's a plant that's just so easy to look after. It comes back year after year and causes me no difficulty. And the flowers have all opened up on my azalea now. Although it's still very small, it's a massive splash of colour. And this was actually given to me as a free plant along with one of my orders once. And my anemones are still doing very well, especially this variety, Mr. Fokker. I've still got quite a few new buds coming through as well. I particularly like the colour of this variety, so I'm very happy that it's still flowering. I think it's very important to try and get as much colour as you can into a tropical garden, because otherwise you get a lot of foliage. I have quite a few types of aquilegia growing around the garden. Some of this self-seeded from the first one I bought, and some of it is a completely different variety that's self-seeded from elsewhere. Like this blue one, which I think is very pretty, so I've left it to grow. I find at this time of year it's best to try and get as much colour in as you can. And I think these little buds here are from the white ones, which self-seeded. My podophyllum, Spotty Dotty, still isn't fully flowering yet. You can see these buds here are getting bigger and ready to go, and one's just started to open here. But you do need to keep a close eye on these as they come under the leaves, and you could easily miss it. But they are really pretty when they do flower.
This winter has not been a great one for the Washingtonias.
Although there's been a surprising amount of variation in how they've fared, like this one here, which seems almost untouched by the harsh winter that we've had. I've had some that have spear-pulled, and a few that, although they're still alive, they're not looking very good at the moment. And some that I've had to cut right back. But you can see here that the new growth is starting to emerge. And even in this one here, which I had to cut right back, you can see that there is some green leaf starting to emerge from deeper within. My Tetrapanax leaves haven't grown a lot bigger yet, and I know there's quite a few growing here. I'm a little bit worried because they didn't reach a very large size last year, so I'm not sure if there's something stunting them.
Now, one of the most exciting things about the garden at this time of year are the new shoots coming through from the ground.
I showed you the gingers that were starting to emerge last time. However, now they're already growing quite a lot bigger. One thing to watch out for if you're growing gingers is they do spread quite a lot. You might be able to see here, this shoot is quite far out from where I planted the plant next to the variegated brunnera. And this variety I've had trying to grow up through under the path despite the weed block. I think a hardy ginger is a fantastic addition to a tropical garden, but you do just need to be a little bit aware of how they can spread. But at this time of year they will come up quite quickly, and you'll soon find you've got some lovely lush foliage. Most of my cannas are starting to come up now. This is a lovely variety with dark red leaves and lovely red flowers. After planting my Strelitzia nicolai, I've just moved my canna musifolia along a little bit to give the Strelitzia a little bit more space because the musifolia does grow very big. And this variety starting to grow here is Canna Tropicana Gold, which is just stunning when it flowers. My hardy colocasia, Pink China, is now starting to grow the leaves. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know that I leave all my colocasias out over winter, and so far I've been lucky to have them all come back. This Jack's Giant looks like it's got the starts of a shoot, so that looks like good news, but it will be later in the year that I'll see from the others if they've made it. My Eucomus Sparkling Burgundy is growing really nicely. I love this plant for the colour of its leaves. However, my other pineapple lilies haven't emerged yet, so I don't know if this variety does just come up a bit earlier.
The bog garden is one of the areas that grows fastest at this time of year.
This is definitely the largest that my Gunnera has grown so far. I know most people want to grow Gunnera manicata. However, very often you get Gunnera tinctoria, which is what I've got. But it's still a beautiful plant that's growing very big. And this is the first year that it's flowered for me, so this is a new surprise. My Equisetium also loves this part of the garden, but again, just like with the gingers, you do need to watch how far this will spread. I have a few spears that are growing in a very different location from where it was originally planted.
Now, as well as my tropical gardening, I do also do a bit of edible gardening.
Among the edible plants that I grow, I've got strawberries here, and I've also grown quite a few different varieties of tomatoes, and I've got a couple of pumpkins there as well. Although I try to stay focused on tropical gardening, please let me know in the comments if you'd like to hear more about this.
There are a few different types of voodoo lily.
I grow 3 different types of voodoo lily in my garden, and although they share the same leaf shape, there are some big differences in how they grow. This dracunculus grows off a larger stem, which has been growing taller and thicker over the last couple of years that I've been growing it, while the sorametum emerges first as a flower spike, and then after flowering the leaves will emerge. This variety multiplies under the ground, so I've got quite a few of these now, although it takes new plants a couple of years before they flower. In this area I had planted a few of my poppies, however the slugs got to them and there is nothing left of them now. Although I killed the ones that I found eating my poppies, it was too late.
Now, one of the biggest problems that I have at this time of year is slugs.
This Nicotiana that I found slug-eaten, I've tried to protect by putting a bit of plastic around it, which is covered in Vaseline. So far this seems to be helping to protect it. As you can see here, all the other Nicotianas that I've planted out as well have all been attacked by slugs. Ideally, I'd have left them to get a bit bigger before putting them in the ground. However, after the successful planting of the one in my last video, I thought perhaps they might have been okay. I did suspect that this sunflower might be vulnerable, so I did preempt it by planting it with the plastic protection in place. However, the slugs still managed to get to it. And then the 3 sunflowers that I've planted here, 2 of them are looking okay, but they have definitely all gone for the 3rd one, which now doesn't have a lot left of it, and I don't think that's going to make it now. One plant I've always avoided getting is a hosta because I know how much the slugs like it. However, this one was bought for me, and so I have planted it out with the pot and Vaseline around the edge, so hoping that that will give it a fighting chance. Despite the cold winter, my fatsias are actually doing much better than they normally do at this time of year. They often look a bit jaded at this time of year. However, at the moment, they've got some fresh new growth and are looking really healthy and happy. Even my less hardy Fatsia spider's web is looking happier than I've ever seen it before. This plant has always just looked like it's clinging on ever since I've bought it, but now it's got fresh new leaves coming out and it looks absolutely fantastic. When I first bought this tower lily, I was very disappointed that it didn't get to the heights I was expecting. However, a couple of years later, it's clear that all it needed was a bit more time, and it has now grown to this lovely plant that you see here.
I've done a few jobs in the garden since my last garden update.
I've moved the dogwood to the back of the garden because I just felt it didn't look right in the middle. And I've painted our new gazebo ready for the hot tub to go in. And although I've started building the pond, this is still a work in progress, so I'll let you know when I've got this completed. Although I must say the nice thing about this garden is that it can be enjoyed by other members of the family as well. This is Darcy. And sometimes I feel like we're growing cats in plant pots as though they're weeds. This is Shelley.
Now, one of the biggest problems I have with weeds in this garden is bindweed.
Bindweed is normally very easily identifiable. It's a vine that grows with these very distinctive shield-shaped leaves. However, I also grow quite a lot of morning glories which have a very similar shaped leaf. But as you can see here, the morning glory is a bit more rounded in shape. But among morning glories there is some variation. You can see this leaf is a bit more pointed, while others don't really resemble bindweed at all. Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook or on my website, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you've enjoyed the content.